Giving us the opportunity to speak about this. I appreciate this is quite a mouthful, really, to sort of say, fostering, sustaining open scholarship practice and metaliteracy. That's quite a mouthful, I think. Anyway, so let's try and maybe boil this down a bit. What this thing actually really is. So basically, the journal is based around the BA in Communications Studies. Sort of, looks at journalism, media practice, theory, and sort of that interface of practice students at final year, third year activities. So we kind of thought that to bring content creation into the sort of teaching and learning environment, and it's very much a collaborative space. So this is very much a symbiosis between ourselves in the library and various colleagues in the School of Communications, including Jim, who had quite some input in this. Unfortunately, he's not here, but Jim Rogers certainly gets credit for this very thing, basically. It's also an experimental playground. When I say experimental, I mean there's method to this. So, really try and sort of play and try things out. And we've, published one issue. The second one is in the pipeline, is pretty much done. So in the summer, we're going to meet Jim and a few other people again to kind of go over a few things purely from, I suppose, a workflow perspective, and Ronan's going to talk about that shortly. So, moving on swiftly. So, metaliteracy, does anyone know what that actually is?
Lots of different literacies.
Okay, yeah, lots of different literacies. Yeah, I looked it up on Wikipedia, and obviously I look at the online dictionary and stuff. It's a bit of a mouthful thing, but as really we're looking at the kind of holistic learner and getting a sense of wholeness, right, in relation to yourself, but also in terms of the environment that you operate within. And that is, in our context, information, right? So going beyond traditional IL, which is, important, locating, understanding, and using stuff, but going beyond that, hence the old Venn diagram is to sort of say, to actually produce something shared and really collaborate, be reflexive and critical as part of that process. And it's quite abstract to do that speaking, didactically at people, and we thought, just bring some action to this thing. So Ronan is now going to dig into the actual journal itself a little bit.
Yeah, so Alex has obviously given us the context now around the journal. So now it's really a case of looking at the nuts and bolts, so the actual submission process for the journal. And the value proposition here is that it does provide a very clear structure for everybody involved, and it also provides a very clear snapshot of progress at every stage. It should be noted that in terms of the communication channels for the workflow, these are done via email. So at certain stages as we progress, email alerts are triggered to the various people who have various roles. So it's all done via the email alert system. And that's built into the platform. So if we start at the top left, and we work our way clockwise. So once grading is complete across the BA in Communication Studies program, the various module coordinators, they'll review the assignments and they'll identify any assignments that are eligible for submission, which are those that have achieved a mark of above 70%. So once these assignments are selected, they're then passed to the editorial board for further review. So the editorial board will look at the pool of assignments and they'll then select via their own criteria a number to bring forward to the actual submission process. And at that point, they'll contact the various authors to ask them if they're interested in taking part. So once the authors have agreed to do so, that's when a real submission workflow kicks in. Because what happens then is the authors are then given a username and password to access the CUJ platform. And once they've accessed it, they'll upload their assignment and kick off the process. So moving on then, if we look at the long column here on the right-hand side, in the editorial review stage, the overall journal editor will conduct an initial review of the submissions, just to make sure that there's no fundamental issues with them. And once complete, they'll then assign the submissions to members of the editorial board, who will actually act as section editors. And the way that works is, normally you would have 3 section editors, and they'll get 2 submissions each to review. So the section editors review the submissions in detail, and they liaise very proactively with the author and they'll make suggestions and comments for improvements, and they'll work with the author to implement those. And once they're happy, those changes have been made, the section editor will pass the submission to the external reviewer, who obviously will then review it and make their own suggestions and comments, which are then passed back to the section editor and the author again, and this becomes a cycle. And then they'll submit for a second review process, and once the external reviewer is happy, it moves forward. So there's a lot of work involved in it. So then once we get to the copy editing stage, this goes back to the editorial board where they'll look at the assignments and submissions just in relation to grammar and spelling to make sure there's no obvious errors and to clean it up a bit more. And then we move back into production, which is where the library and myself and Alex get involved again. So here, we'll take each submission and we'll make sure that it adheres to the agreed standards, i.e. that it has a cover page, that it has an abstract, that it has keywords, and that the references are in the Harvard style, just to make sure the convention is correct. And then towards the end, we move back to proofing with the editorial board and the author. So the final checks are carried out at this point by both the author and the editorial board, again, just to correct any last-minute typos or spelling mistakes or formatting inconsistencies. And once they're happy, it comes back to us once more, to the library, and we'll move to the pre-publication stage. And this is where myself and Alex, we'll create those documents in a PDF and a JATS XML format. And we'll then upload those to the CUJ platform and schedule those to go live. And that's when you have your issue. So as you can see, there's multiple layers to this process, but it's very clear at each stage who has to do what and when, via that email alert system. And that's one of the benefits of this platform. I'm going to pass you back to Alex now to further talk about the journal. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Yeah, so benefits really, basically to get people into publishing, taking stuff that's already there that's very good and lift it and put it out there. So that raises the bar as well for the students and everyone involved. It's basically a baseline piece, and so the attitude is very different when you know this is going to be published and it's going to be open out there. It's also supporting students themselves and each other. So if you're a first-year student, you come in, you can look at a third-year piece. It sets the bar, you know, what are we looking for? Well, this is the kind of stuff, if you deliver this, you're doing well. But also relationship building. Certainly in my role and Ronan's previous role, being subject librarian, to have a lot of dealings with the school, and this has lifted the conversation into a different realm altogether. It's also quite political. John mentioned, John Cox yesterday, the library's political. It is, so we're like trying to kind of, you know, get under the hood through proactive engagement on scholarly publishing, you know, the scholarly life cycle, have conversations about that. And that's open conversations and doors that I previously didn't have. Sort of, you know, questioning the sort of prevailing doxa and all of this, that's a key implement of this journal as well. Yeah, and tangible insights into the actual BA program. So this is a showpiece as well. So they utilize this for marketing, literally marketing purposes. So imagine you're recruiting students into your program. Well, why not just showcase what they actually produce? And that's a good thing, we think. Challenges. Well, it's not straightforward, of course. I mean, you saw the workflow. There's a lot of stuff going on. Authenticity, integrity of student work. AI is coming into play, I guess, to some extent, maybe not just yet, but it's certainly going to be something for sure. But also, I mean, this is not perfect, right? I mean, if you go through the first issue, you may well pick up on bits and pieces. I mean, I certainly noticed when I go through, you know, at pre-publication state or production stage typesetting, you go into it when you turn this into XML and you spot stuff and you go back. This really shouldn't be the case. Citing and referencing, and then clarity of roles and responsibilities. Ronan, you may have a couple of things on that.
Yeah, again, just in relation to clarity of roles and responsibilities, it's an ongoing conversation with the editorial board in the school, because obviously it's transient. People leave faculty, people arrive, so getting a consistent editorial board is a bit of a challenge, and we have to constantly have those conversations with the editorial board to make sure everyone's clear on the roles that they have to play for any particular issue. In terms of the impact of the the platform itself. There's a number of ways of looking at this, either qualitatively or quantitatively. In terms of quantitative numbers, we do have Google Analytics plugged into it, and we also have an analytics tool within the journal itself. So just a couple of headline numbers there in terms of impact. Since its inception, we've had nearly 3,000 visitors, nearly 2,300 visitors, unique visitors to the platform, and over 8,000 page views. Also, we've had a number of users coming from multiple different countries, Ireland being the main one. Also, in terms of numbers themselves, you can see there that they're quite high in terms of the submissions and views that we have. And we also have a bit of feedback as well from Annemiek, who's the author of the editor for issue 2. And it's nice to see those kind of qualitative feedback in terms of how they feel about the platform as well, which adds value to it. In terms of what's next, I'll just mention Alex in this one.
Yeah, expand the remit of the journal. So this is, the workflow is one sort of, I suppose, approach. Like there's multiple different ways you can do this, and this is nothing new. Like Simon Fraser in Canada have played with this quite extensively. They have like students as editors, students as authors and reviewers. There's different flavors you can weave this into. And basically, yeah, I guess maybe at some point develop a journal that is run by students as well as staff involvement. So this journal is one iteration, but personally, I guess collectively, ourselves, we see this is one of different journals popping out of the woodwork, I guess.
Yeah. And then just to leave you with that final image.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a launch, of course, and with a chat, and Jim basically had a bit of a roundtable talk, and the students were genuinely thrilled with themselves to sort of see we've published something, and obviously they were very motivated students who really put good work into this, and they're just happy, and they utilize this. They will use this for their own good, going on to maybe graduate studies, and it's a showcase piece as well as evidencing, applied learning. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.